Welcome to Real Estate Done Rightish, your favorite podcast for realtors by realtors. I'm Jen.
And I'm Annalie. And for a combined 30 years, we've been working in this industry just trying to figure it out. And by figuring it out,
we mean we've practiced saying it's a dynamic market instead of absolutely no one knows what's happening about 500 times in the mirror.
That's been the last 5 years, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It's a dynamic market. I've been calling it wonky, I think, for 5 years.
You're like, this is the new wonky normal.
Yeah.
This is the new normal. All right, real quick, if you're enjoying the show, can you please do us a huge favor? And you know what they say, Annie. What do they say to do to the follow button?
You say smash it. Smash that follow button.
Smash that follow button and leave us a 5-star review. It really does help other professionals, real estate professionals in particular, find us and join us, our community. So thank you. Thank you in advance for doing that.
Okay. Today we're going to cover, we're going to talk about just, I'm going to bring up a little thing to talk to you about, Jen. I have a question for you.
Wait.
And then we're going to talk about multiple offers. So specifically how to navigate multiple offer situations with ethical clarity and professional confidence. Those are going to be kind of the two things that we're going to keep going back to. I think that there's some confusion in markets about what the rules are, how to handle them, who's in charge of making those rules or communicating them. And so we're just going to dig into that. We are in the state of Minnesota, we are in a spring market, which is we are seeing multiples right now. Yeah. So I think it's a good time to talk on this. And then we've got some resources that we're going to share in the show notes, a multiple offer strategy guide and some communication templates, all surrounding multiple offers. So make sure to check those out at the end as well.
Okay.
So Jen, question for you.
Yes, Annalie.
Today,
oh God.
If you could magically master one real estate skill,
oh God,
what would it be? Like instantly.
Magically master one real estate skill. What would it be today? I mean, the first thing that's coming to mind, I was talking to you about this last week, is knowing, like if I could have the knowledge of knowing everything there is to know about homes, like home building, home maintenance, like the systems of the home, that feels like a somewhat of a gap to me that I've always had insecurities around. So just a couple weeks ago, I was shadowing more inspections. Like I've been in homes, I've been at inspections, I've owned a home. Yeah. But for whatever reason, it's like a spot for me. And we talked about it. I was like, man, what would it be like if I just did the 5-week course to like become an inspector without becoming an inspector, just so I had that broad base of knowledge. So yeah, that would be the thing.
Okay, what do you think that would do for you?
I think all of these things give us more confidence. Like we can
and with confidence comes competence.
And with competence comes, I don't remember what we said in that, but yeah, I think we can find confidence in a lot of things. And in like beneath that, and I think we talked about this in the first episode, like if I don't have that skill, what I do have is the confidence that I know how to find answers to questions, that I'm smart enough to figure it out. So if somebody's like, what is this thing in this house? It's like, I'm not sure, but I can figure it out. Yeah. And that's an easy answer, but you feel more confident if you walk into a home like, what? Ask me anything. I know all the things, you know, and that confidence is helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With disclosure that you don't know all the things.
Thank you. This is why you should be in real estate law. That's so true. What would you, I got to ask you the same question. What would you say? Oh, you weren't ready for this.
I was not ready for this. I thought we were just talking. I was just going to grill you, and then I got not talking about anything.
No. Oh, God. I'm sinking in my chair. If you're not on YouTube, you should get on YouTube and look at me. Right?
Jen is disappearing. She's getting so small. She's on the floor. Okay, well, I'll just start talking while you figure your chair out. Yeah. I think it would be more using technology to connect with people, whether that be, we're, as real estate agents, we're always looking to gather more humans that are like us and are people that we would want to interact with and get them in our database, right? And I used to do like Facebook ads and different things that would attract people in communities. Those aren't working great anymore. So using technology, and I think I've got some ideas about some ways to do it in a way that is very, it's about community and connectivity and not just about getting a lead, quote unquote.
Yeah.
So probably just digging into that. If I could like have that knowledge, because it's one of those things that I'm always like, I'm going to do that this week. I'm going to spend 4 hours trying to figure out a plan on this. And then the week goes by and I'm like, well, that got shoved to the back burner because everything else happened. So, if I could just instantly have that knowledge, and I mean, I know there's companies I could hire to do that. That's another thing.
That's true.
For everyone that's like listening and is like, you idiot.
I just listened to like a
somebody.
15-minute Dan Martell podcast episode on the way in, and he was talking about like building any business to 10K in a month. But one of the last things he talked about was AI and like learning AI. And it's such a, of course we should learn AI, but I was thinking about this morning too, how within the last year, because he talked about video editing, and I was like, I learned how to use Adobe Premiere Pro. How did I learn how to do that? Just freaking YouTube, like, which is so annoying and the thing I hate the most. But I'm also like, that the tools that we have access to that we can just get on the internet and learn if we apply is kind of wild.
Yeah.
And nobody can take that away. You could hire somebody to do it, but if you're like kind of interested and you actually understand how to use AI and learn how to use, you know what I mean? Like learn how to learn.
Yeah.
That's huge. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
That was a fun chat. Thanks for that little question, Annie.
Thanks for throwing it back at me. Not unprepared. I mean, you weren't prepared either. So
No,
fair
that's
game.
the point. It's a casual check-in.
Says it on our sheet. That's what we're doing. Okay, so today, let's get into it. We're talking about multiple offers while maintaining professional integrity, which I think can be challenging. I think more challenging. I mean, everybody wants multiple offers if you're a listing agent, right? I'm primarily a listing agent. I want every single one of my properties to get multiple offers. And there's trickiness surrounding that. So how do we do it? As a listing agent, how do we best represent our seller? As a buyer's agent, how do we best represent our buyer? And then as agents talking to each other, how do we best communicate to one another, right? That's really what we're going to kind of break it down into. Yeah.
So today we're not talking about the strategy about how to get multiple offers, because there's so many things we could talk about, which is why we have a whole podcast dedicated to these topics. But we'll talk about just from the point at which you've received multiple offers, how do we handle that as agents? Okay, so you're the listing agent. What's the first thing that you're doing as a listing agent when you receive multiple offers?
Well, our office specifically requires that we actually talk about multiple offers and how we're going to handle them at the time of signing the listing contract. So the very first contract the very first conversation is at the time of contract. So we talk about what does it look like? What does that usually look and feel like? So I start by talking to them about, if we go into the first weekend and we only have 2 showings booked, we might not be looking at a multiple offer situation, or we might not be preparing for that as much. I have one coming on tomorrow that's been coming soon this week. I think we already have 14 listing or showings booked for the first day. Wow. Everybody's trying to get in the first day. I've already had 8 or 9 phone calls saying, do you have a deadline, right? This one is more than likely going to go into multiple offers. It's a very hot market. So I, at the time of listing, kind of prepare my sellers for what does it look like if we are kind of leaning towards that. Let's start talking about strategy. And then we're really not going to make a strategy until we have multiple offers or we have at least one offer in hand. I don't ever want to post a deadline or say highest and best without offers in hand. How can I call?
Without more than one offer.
Without more than one offer in hand. I will post a deadline with one. So let's say I have 35 showings over the weekend. I've had 6 people kind of call and ask questions, and I get an offer in.
Asking questions saying, we might be interested. My buyer is thinking about
What's your
writing.
ideal closing date?
They're fishing
What's
around
this?
At this point.
Or they've got, the fireplace looked like this. We saw this note on that. Is that a concern? Or, they're asking kind of those pre-writing an offer questions. If I'm starting to get those phone calls, because people that aren't interested usually don't call.
Right.
So I kind of look at how many people are asking those questions. How many showings do I still have? Do I have any second showings on the books? If it's kind of looking like we might go into highest or multiple offers and then call for highest and best, we might set a deadline so that everybody just knows, and that might prompt people to write. In this market right now, I've had times where all weekend I'm getting phone calls. When's your highest and best deadline? I'm like, I don't have an offer.
So I can't. So just to be really clear, we can't and shouldn't be quote unquote calling for highest and best. Highest and best means we have multiple offers in hand, and now we want you to go back to your clients and say, is this your highest and your best offer? Do you want to change it? Do you want to do? So when you say I'm setting a deadline, you're saying, hey, we've received an offer. We're setting a deadline by which at this time, if we don't receive any more offers, that's it.
Correct.
Okay.
So
and there's a difference there.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when I get the first offer, there are times where you get two offers within 5 minutes of each other, and then that's a different conversation. But if I get one offer in, usually depending on what's going on with the rest of the activity, right? Then it's an activity-based conversation. So if I get one offer in, it's looking like we've got a lot of other interest, then we might set that deadline. And that is exactly our disclosure to everybody. Everybody gets that reach out that's booked a showing. I reach out to all of them saying, I now have an offer in hand. Sellers will be reviewing any and all offers Sunday at 6 p.m. I will communicate if this turns into a multiple offer situation and if that deadline changes for any reason.
So I want to like punctuate something you said. Part of your best practice and part of what makes this, we're talking about ethical, is that you're extending the same opportunity to everybody who's booked a showing, which means any agent and their buyer who has shown interest or seen the property or has a showing set up to see the property. They're all privy to the same information, which is we've received an offer.
Correct.
Okay.
It also gets put in the MLS in agent notes. We have an agent remarks section, so that gets posted there. So anybody that's even looking at the listing knows that that's the deadline now. If we've had people through open houses, we contact all of them as well and let them
Because
know.
if we don't do that and we reach and I say, Annie, I have an offer in and I know you have a buyer for my listing. Do you want to write? Does your client want to write? Then that's not equal opportunity. That's potentially discrimination if it looks like I'm discriminating against other buyers. So in order to be ethical, we can't just zero in on one potential buyer.
Yeah. I should pause as well and say, it is never my decision if we call for highest and best or not.
Yes.
If that first offer comes in, and there's a reason, I know that there are some agents that they completely sit down and make a strategy with their sellers before they even go to market on how they're going to handle multiple offers. I've done that in the past, and then the very first offer that comes in is $100,000 over asking, cash, closed in 3 weeks, no inspection.
You're like, if we say no to this,
and they could say no, or they could risk it and still call for highest and best and see what else comes in, right? Or see if they can push that person even further. But I've had sellers that just say, let's be done. We can sign this right now. And that's like within 4 hours of being on the market. And they sign an offer. And so if I had pre-communicated, sellers will be reviewing any and all offers Sunday at 6 p.m. Now, ethically, I as an agent look like I'm taking back what I've communicated out. So that doesn't feel good either. So I'll use this weekend as an example. I've had a bunch of people calling saying, what's the plan for multiples? Don't have one. I need an offer before we're going to make any plans. Because what if I have 40 showings and nobody writes an offer? Yeah. Again, I don't like putting things out there and kind of assuming the market's going to provide something.
Right.
In case it doesn't.
That, and or like you said, you get an amazing offer, or you get an amazing offer with a deadline that, you're always, one thing you're really good at is telling your clients, like, this is your decision, and there are pros and cons to every decision. And in negotiation, there is this kind of like, we can sort of call people's bluff. Like, they wrote a really, really great offer, strong offer, because they love the property. Let's say they wrote it at 5 p.m. and they put a 9 p.m. that day deadline on, which is kind of absurd. But what if they did? What if they wrote $100,000 over in cash? Then they put that deadline on it. Like, then your seller is going to risk like potentially losing that offer. So why would you in advance communicate how you're going to handle the situation before you have all the details in front of you?
Well, before we know what the situation is.
You don't know what the situation is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, if you listen to any of my trainings ever, like you just said, what I tell my clients over and over again is, it's not my job to make the decision for you. It's my job to let you know the pros, cons, risks, and rewards of every decision that you're going to make and help you navigate which is best for you. So, is the risk worth the potential reward is really what it starts to come down to in this conversation for sellers specifically. I shared this with you a few days ago. I had one last fall where we had a great offer come in on day one on the market. And the market was slower. It was not a hot market. And it was a really nice, strong offer. It was barely over asking, but it had nice terms. And they wanted an answer quickly. And my sellers chose to risk it and give it the weekend. And we went live on a Friday. We got the offer Friday night or Saturday morning. And they said, no, we want to give it the full weekend and just let the market breathe. Buyers were not happy, that first set of buyers. And I told them, one of the risks is these buyers don't want to be in multiple offers, or they don't want to wait. They want to go right on something else. There is inventory in the market right now. That's not always the case, but at that time there was. And they might walk away. And if we're left with nothing at the end of the weekend, that's going to be a bummer. Well, we get another offer in. Okay. It was very similar terms. All right. Now we're cooking with something. So now we have another conversation. Okay. Now we're calling for highest and best at Sunday at 6 or whatever the timeline was. I had 3 other people say they were writing. I had 1 other person write. By Sunday at 6 or whatever that deadline is, I just keep saying that, all 3 rescinded their offers.
Why?
Offer 1 was annoyed. They just got mad at the sellers. They wanted that house, and now they were like, you know what? We're going to go buy something else. You want to play with us? There's 4 other homes just like yours out there right now.
Yeah.
We're just going to go right on one of those. We don't want to do this. And they rescinded that morning, Sunday morning. The other 2 rescinded within hours. And one of them had come back for a second showing and just said it needs more work than we thought it did originally. We don't want to deal with it. The other people didn't give me a reason. They just said they changed their minds. And so we went from multiples to nothing. And so I had a multiple offer call with sellers where they risked it and it did not work. It failed, and I've never had that happen in 21 years. So I was like, well, you're special.
This is the point of this podcast.
In some way,
it's like, just when we thought we figured it out, it's like, well, I've never had that happen, and that this happens, which is, again, why it's so important for us to say, these are the risks and rewards. This is potentially what could happen. This is the advantage of having experience in real estate or listening. I mean, this is not meant to be what it is, but or listening to podcasts, educating yourself on what could happen so that you can tell your clients. And a part of it is covering our tails, right? A part of it is sort of under promising and over delivering. We can't promise how other people are going to behave in a situation like that.
Also legally covering our tails,
not our job.
because it's not my job to make decisions for my sellers. I am not my sellers. I don't have their financial situation. I don't have their timeline in mind. I don't have children.
You don't know their risk, they have. How risk adverse they are.
100%. I am not them. So if I did, and I tell them this, I've had so many sellers be like, but if you were me, what would you do? And I tell them, I can't. It will not be serving you well if I give you what I would do. And I list all those things out. I say, listen, I have a different family status than you do. I have different timelines than you do. I have different economic pressures in my life than you do. I have different investments than you do. I have different, all the things. And if I as a person with just 2 dogs and no children make a decision for your family who's relocating with 4 kids and 3 cats, it looks completely different. So it's just legally and ethically and all of it protects when you're completely taking yourself out of the decision-making process. Your job is to guide them to make the best decisions.
Well, and there's heat behind you. I can hear the heat behind what you're saying. And I felt it too as being a coach and being in management and seeing what happens behind the scenes. The countless times agents say, okay, what I'm going to do is da-da-da.
Yeah.
Oh, what we're going to do,
or what I'm going to tell
my sellers to do,
yeah,
is, and it comes out in their language, and then it's like a practice to pause and say, you don't get to decide. And they're like, well, I know. And I'm like, no, but what you're saying is indicative of how you actually practice. Yeah. And that's really important for realtors to understand, because it's also important for the clients to be empowered. It's 100%. It's not just about covering our tails. It's also about actually educating them so that they can make an empowered decision.
Yes.
Okay, off the soapbox. Here we go.
Okay.
So when we call for highest and best, can we talk about the deadline thing? Because that's a question we got the other day. Someone popped in the office and said, how long do I wait? Do I put it a week out? If we get multiple offers on a Friday, when should the deadline be and why?
What do you think my answer is going to be?
What does the seller want?
You asked your seller, exactly. Yeah. So, and here's a time where I have had sellers, they start to they're like, oh, we get one offer and it's great. And they're like, oh my gosh, I'm thrilled. And then they're like, but now I want more. And you start to see the greedy eyes come out, and they're like, but what else might be coming in? And they start seeing, I've had people that see a showing booked on a Tuesday and one on Thursday of next week. And they're like, but what about those people? And Okay, well, there's going to be 3 new
You know what
buyers
this is
entering the
like?
market
This is
next
like
weekend
dating
too.
apps. It's like there's an illusion that there's so many great options out there.
Okay, well, that's a whole different podcast.
Yeah, I know. I'll cover that on a different one. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, sorry.
No, it's okay. So, again, we talk about the risks and rewards of length of time. A standard, I would say, is if you've got a lot of, or a norm, I don't like to use the word standard. If you've got a lot of interest early in a weekend, you give it the weekend. So maybe Sunday night, Monday morning. I always tell them, based on your work schedule and what's good for you, when is there going to be a calm hour or two that we can really dig into what we're looking at? Because if we have 12 offers and there's 6 of them are almost identical, now we're really going to have to go into the minutia of what terms make the most sense. That's going to be a longer conversation if there's 2 and one's great and one's right?
Yeah.
So what works best for you? I think that you want to find the sweet spot. And I just tell my sellers this, we don't want buyers sitting and waiting and waiting and waiting and starting to wait for hopefully something better comes next week. I know I'm one of who knows how many offers. Hopefully something, they start looking and they start saying, well, there was that other house. So we don't want to create that for them. We want them
They're getting
excited and
anxious,
they want them to keep their offer in, like that, not the time when all of them rescinded. And then we want to also give it enough time for people to see it. Right now, we're coming up against spring breaks. That's one of the things so people are trying to get quickly into this house that I have coming on Friday before they leave for spring break for a week. So there's, you want to give people the opportunity as well. So, or buyers the opportunity. So then we just talk about what does that sweet spot kind of feel like for you sellers? If it starts to get out too long, like I've had people that we get 2 offers and they're like, well, can we give it next weekend? And we're talking on Saturday. And I'm like, why would these 2 hang out?
It's your choice.
They're gonna,
But let me tell you what could happen here.
Yeah.
And you got to, in my opinion, it's like coaching the seller to think like a buyer. You're
Exactly.
out there buying
We need to
write an offer. How long are you willing to sit around to see if they're going to pick you?
Yeah.
It's like,
and I know that in some markets, they were waiting a long time. I heard about some markets, I think like 2020, great example, right? Sometimes there was a week deadline where it was just like, and I saw some agents literally listing a house and just saying, we are making highest and best final decisions. They didn't even have an offer in hand, but they were just putting that we will be making that decision this date. And it was like 7 or 10 days out.
Yeah.
I think in Washington, I think that was the law. They might just have been setting like a time when all offers were due by. Don't quote me on that. But I remember seeing different markets doing different things during those crazy markets. So, timing can be different based on market conditions. Also, I think right now in a normal spring market in the state of Minnesota, you don't want to give it more than a few days in most scenarios.
Okay. Anything else on the seller side?
How do they want me to behave about disclosing information? So it is to the buyer's agents. Exactly.
Yeah.
So it is 100% the seller's choice if they would like me to share how many offers we have, any terms that those offers are showing, things like that. I let them know that is their choice. I personally think that gets into some ethical goofiness. I think if you're sharing with one person, you should be sharing with all, because otherwise, why are you sharing with one?
We were on a porch one night.
Well, we're going to talk about this as like part 3 of this whole conversation.
Yeah.
Is this conversation. But I do talk to my sellers usually mostly about, it is your choice if we tell any buyers anything about anything. We have the option to just negotiate with one buyer. We don't have to call for highest and best, right? There's all these different options that they have. And there are scenarios where all of those options may fit as well. We're not going into all of them today because this would be a 4-hour podcast. So what I will usually say is like, do you want me to disclose if we have one offer? Or if I think we have offers coming in, how communicative do you want me to be? And a lot of times they'll say, use your judgment, or we'll just keep checking in. If it's looking like, again, we're going to get more than one offer, or I even have one offer coming in, I try to be extremely communicative with my sellers. I also try to kind of keep their expectations down So if I think I have an offer coming in, I usually don't give them like, it's coming. I say,
Yeah.
I'm getting indicators that it looks like this party may be writing. I'll let you know as soon as I know more. If other people are asking what interest is like, do you want me to disclose that we may have an offer coming in? I don't have anything in hand. Or,
And you're
we
talking
kind of go
about
through all the
disclosure to the
scenarios.
sellers. You're not talking about disclosure to the buyer's agents. You're talking right now about speaking with the sellers about how much information do you want me to be sharing with you?
No. With
You're
the buyer's
talking about the
agents.
buyer's agents.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought you were saying with the seller in that moment. Okay, that's good clarification.
No, I mean, well, with the seller, I don't ask them. Once I have an offer in hand, I'm legally obligated to
Yes.
present it
Time is of the
immediately.
yes.
Or as quickly as possible.
Yep.
It's that getting the actual offer in hand.
Right.
How much do I communicate with my seller? So
That's
again,
what you were talking about.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
So I play that by ear based on, again, how anxious are my sellers? How this? I had one a couple of weeks ago where my sellers, it was Sunday afternoon. We literally had a $25,000 price adjustment planned for Monday morning. We had pre-planned it. And I got a call from an agent that I knew, and she said, my buyer is ecstatic. We are writing a very strong offer. I'm going to my office to write it right now. Mm-hmm. I sent my clients a text, and I just said, hey, I don't usually do this, but I think we have an offer coming in today or tomorrow morning. Are you cool if we pause on any plans for price adjusting until I know more?
Right.
And it's looking good.
Right.
In that scenario, I shared that. In some, I wouldn't. If I didn't know the agent, if they were being kind of squirrely, I think we're going to write. We're going to talk later tonight.
I think this is really important because I think this is indicative of emotional intelligence, which is really important in real estate, and sort of protecting, guarding sort of the emotional stability of your clients, and understanding that it's already a roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
We know on the back end how many people will say we're thinking about writing, and then they just don't because they have buyers who are going through the same roller coaster and see a different house and write on it. And so as much as we can be a buffer for that kind of additional volatility, the better.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean we're keeping things, but we're making a judgment call in the moment about how much to share with our sellers so that we're not getting their hopes up.
Well, my job is also to make them have a good experience.
Yes.
And sometimes they don't need to know every little thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes that will make the experience worse.
Right.
Or more stressful.
Right.
Right. I want to flatten the roller coaster, not make it bigger.
Right.
I love roller coasters. By the way.
Oh, we've never been on a roller coaster together.
I haven't been on one
we
in
should
a
do
long
that.
time.
Okay.
Anyway.
Okay, buyers. Repping buyers.
Yeah.
One thing that, we talked about this, what I was going to say earlier, we were on a porch and we kind of got into it, we were talking about, okay, if I'm representing a buyer and my job is to do everything I can in this kind of a market, in a hot market like we have in Minneapolis, to help them win in multiple offers, what is everything to their advantage? How can I give them every advantage possible to win?
Yeah.
And so
let's pause and let's take it back to how do you set up with buyers right now so that they are prepared and comfortable and coached to go into a multiple offer situation.
Yeah.
So how do you set that up on the front end?
Yeah. With all of this, it comes down to expectation setting. So whether it's looking at data or anecdotally, which I think is the advantage of having a big business or being involved in a community of people that know what's happening. Like in our particular office, we have a private Facebook group that's like, hey, how was your weekend? Oh, we wrote this many offers, we didn't get them. We had this many offers come in on our listing and they looked like this. And then the questions are, at what price point and in which locations? Because we still have kind of a tale of two markets in Minneapolis where if you're prepping a buyer to just say to them right now, it's a hot market, you've got to go throw everything in, that's like too carte blanche. It's not, right? It's not specific enough for the buyer. But it is preparing them basic information or basic steps. They need to be pre-approved. They need to have worked with a lender.
100%.
Right?
I will say, I think in a hotter market, the further into the loan process they can be helps sellers feel good. I just had a multiple offer.
Lender,
Yeah,
I think
who's
is
their
important.
lender? I just had one where I had a very, very particular seller. We had 5 offers, and they were all within $2,000 of each other.
Jeez.
And it did start coming down to other terms.
Right.
And one of the things that it happened to be the strongest financially, had appraisal gap, had a limited inspection. I mean, it kind of it checked every box, the winning bid, or the winning offer. They also were fully underwritten. They were literally just waiting for a purchase agreement. And the lender wrote a letter stating that, and then also called me and said, literally, we are waiting for a purchase agreement and an appraisal to plug in to underwriting. Everything else is done. We will have to do final, job checks and things like that.
Yeah.
But everything else was done. He said, we are plugging in those 2 things. They have, and STIPs will come up after all that gets fulfilled, whatever. But everything else was done. So for that seller, that also was incredibly appealing. So knowing those kinds of things, like what are all the terms, and then coaching your buyer on getting all of, do your best in all of these areas. Right?
And maybe that's like a whole separate conversation. Like, what are all of the specific terms, and how can they compete with all of those terms? I mean, you just kind of rattled a bunch of them off. I don't know if we want to go into that in this, but
I think just
them
making sure
understanding what they are.
Yeah.
Earnest money's another one. It's in addition to the pre-approval or being fully underwritten. It's like, how strong of a buyer are you? Like, do you? And earnest money is one way to indicate how much money or how much cash do you have available right now to throw in the pot. And even though if this falls apart, you're going to get that back. It goes to show that you're not house poor. You've got cash available. Yeah.
So I think we don't need to go through every term because again, that's a little market specific. But making sure that on the front end, and again, this is a conversation we're having at the time of signing with a buyer at a buyer consultation, we're going through terms that you might want to start considering now, how you feel about inspection. What is your financial situation? Do you have extra cash to put more down for earnest money, or do you have extra cash to put more down payment down, or do you have extra cash to do an appraisal gap coverage? Talking about, do you have money if they're not willing to pay the commission, your commission? That's now a part of the purchase agreement in most situations. So really going through every different term, and again, risk reward. If you want the reward of this house, how much risk are you willing to take on? And how much risk makes sense for you? For me, I will waive an inspection on my own property unless I'm buying a very old home with a specific thing, that I'm worried about. Yeah. I did on my last property. I
did too.
I waived. I didn't do any inspections. I had my dad come and look at it with me, who is practically an inspector.
We have the advantage of realtors of at least knowing the basics about a home, but also
I also knew that if there was $5,000 or $10,000, I was fine. If something came up and it was not going to happen. So anyway, but I was willing to take that risk on. Buyer, does it make sense for you to take that risk on? For some it does, for some it does not. So again, it's not my decision. This is a term that some sellers will be looking for, and it is your choice if you want to take that risk or not. Appraisal gap coverage. Do you want to take that risk if we're going above asking, so really going through all of that with them on the front end so that when they're excited, they're not all of a sudden, because it can kind of feel like a downer all of a sudden also if you're like, okay, give them all your money, take away all your rights, cover the appraisal if it doesn't appraise, right? Like that starts to feel like,
you put that in when you're like, when a buyer is considering what their highest and best is, they're going to put in, they're not going to lose sleep over it one way or the other. It's like when you wake up tomorrow after you submit this offer, will you regret that you didn't do more, or will you regret that you did as much as you did? Like,
yeah, I was going to say if another buyer goes in with these terms that you're not choosing to go in with, are you going to be upset when they win?
Yeah.
Same thing, right?
Yeah.
So just really coaching them and getting them comfortable on what all of their options are and what weight those might have.
Yeah.
Price is always one, but there's a lot of other terms that are weighty in these markets and mean a lot to a seller.
Yeah.
If you're in a 1907 house and you're waiving inspection and there's some questionable things, you might have just beat somebody that's 10 or 20 over you in asking price. So that would be my really getting buyers comfortable and then letting them know it is the seller's choice how they decide to call for highest and best. If they decide to call for highest and best, we coach our buyers very specifically. Don't wait for the call. If you like a home, write fast. Sometimes you write and they accept it. and they
Yeah.
don't wait 3 days and see if it's going to go into multiple
Right.
offers. So first to write can be, some sellers put a little weight on that as well.
Oh, yeah.
They're like, well,
They're
they
like,
came
they
first
came
and they
first and
waited
they-
3
yeah.
days and they're strong, and maybe they counter a term or two, but they
Yeah.
end up
But they
really putting
appreciate
some
that.
weight on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so I would say really coaching them on getting comfortable going fast. In this market, we're in a goofy market here where I feel like things are either going in multiples and they're bonkers, or they're sitting. And it's kind of the pretty house needs work house. So we're really talking to them about, are you going to want to be in the pretty house? Is that what's most important to you? If it is, let's have the conversation about all these terms. Or do you want to strategize and go for the homes that no one else is writing on and negotiate, and we can talk about making that house into what you want over the next
Yeah.
5 years.
Yeah,
And then it's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
So we also are talking about that, opportunities in the market. And do you want to go for the house that everybody wants?
Okay. I want to keep us moving.
Yep.
My thought right now is that the third point we talk about is the presentation of the offer, and within that, potentially including this letter from the buyer. So let's talk about the letter from the potential letter from the buyer first, and then let's talk about how to present the offer to the listing agent, because I think that's a huge part of potentially winning for your buyer is, what is the communication? How do I present the offer? How do I set it up as the agent? Say, hey, Annalie, you're going to want to work with me in getting this to close, because I think that's an advantage. Okay, so one of the things we talked about that I feel like is, I don't want to use the word controversial, but just potentially it gets into unethical-ish space. Look at me dance around that. Is a letter from the buyer.
Unethical-ish.
So I was just talking to a client the other day who said, yeah, when I bought my last house, it was a really hot market then. So we've had just a hot market for years in Minneapolis now. But when I bought my last house, it was a really hot market. And so we went to see the property, and I saw the neighbors outside. And I just he's like, he was the client. He's not the agent. So he said, I wasn't really thinking much about it. So I went to the neighbor and just said, hey, can I ask you some questions about the neighborhood and about the house? And he said, we really hit it off and we had a great conversation. I told my buyer's agent that. My buyer's agent is like, you should write a letter to the seller, because these neighbors are good friends, and now you know that. So right. And they won the offer when there was another one that was $50,000 higher. They found that out later, and there was like, they picked us because they wanted to have us in the neighborhood, even though they weren't going to be in the neighborhood. And this is where it's like, why did they pick them?
Right.
Was it because of race? Was it because of things that could put us in a category at risk for discrimination potentially if we're repping
fair
our
housing
buyers at it?
issues,
Yeah, fair housing. So my thinking is, as a buyer's agent, because I know on the other side, sometimes sellers they choose based on, what's the word I'm looking for? It's kind of this romanticism. It's just like it's an emotional decision where they're like, this house has been my baby for 40 years.
Yeah.
We talked about that with your mom's house. It's like, this house has been my baby for 40 years. I've loved it. I've had all these memories in it. The thought of handing it off to someone that's going to have the same experience is like, wow, what a dream to be able to do that. So if I'm representing a buyer now, I'm thinking, write the letter, take your name off, don't put pictures in, because some people, it could work, again, pros, cons, it could be a disadvantage to the buyer. If you have a seller that's like, no, we don't want, I had a seller once tell me, we'll accept any offers from any buyers, but we don't want Hmong families moving into this neighborhood. We don't want Hmong families. Did I tell you this? Have I never told you this? He said, I don't want a Hmong.
I would run.
No, I looked at him and I said, I've got to tell you right now, we cannot discriminate that way. And he's like, no, I don't have anything. I don't personally dislike Hmongs, but they just have big multi-generational families, and we don't want a lot of cars in the driveway. So this is
I'm sweating right now.
I know. This is like a classic fair housing. This is why fair housing exists.
It almost sounds like an example they would use in a CE that you're like, that would never happen.
No, it really happened.
Yeah.
And so I just said, if you're asking me to do that, then I'm going to have to cancel the contract right here, and we can't work together. which he backed up from that and it was fine. But the point is there are real people out there like that.
Yeah.
So if I'm representing a buyer, whatever their race is or their familial status or their sexual orientation, I don't want that to hinder the process. And to be ethical, I don't want to manipulate it and use it to their advantage if I'm like, oh, these sellers love gay people, so let's make sure we know that they know that you're gay. I'm just saying, like, it's real.
All of this is making me so uncomfortable.
Well, this is the real talk.
Yeah.
This is the real stuff that happens behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So, okay, long story short, if I'm representing a buyer, my job is to do everything I can to help them get the property. I think that is one tool in the tool belt when presented well that can potentially help. And you would say to that as a listing agent.
I would say to that when I go again through the listing contract and I talk about fair housing, I make a point to say we don't want to know anything about your buyers except for what their terms are, the money, the terms of the purchase agreement. And I explain to them, here's why. We don't want to accidentally discriminate against anybody because it's against the law. So the less we know about them and the more we focus on the terms that matter, which is money. I say the only thing I care about seeing is their bank account is my joke line or whatever. But I make a point to really pause there and let my sellers know I'd rather we don't know anything about them at all. I want to know if I'd like to know how smooth the transaction's going to go. We don't know that, right? There's things that can happen. I'd like to know their money. I'd like to know their financials to the point that is ethically allowable. And then the other terms of the purchase agreement, right? And that's what we're going to make our decisions on. We don't really want to know anything about them. Or do you want to know if they write a letter? Do you want to know, do you want to see the letter? And do you want me to redact it if there's information that might have fair housing in it?
So you're having this conversation at the listing appointment or like on the front end when they decide to work with you. Yeah, that's really
And then
wise.
when we sit down and we've got an offer, if there's a letter, again, I will ask, would you like to see the letter? A lot of sellers choose to see it after they make their choice.
Interesting.
They say, I'd love to know who they are, but I want to make the choice
It's like a gender reveal
without them.
after you find out you're pregnant.
But
It's like a party.
And part of that is that I've put a little bit of the fear of God in them about fair housing, right? We don't want to accidentally break the law or be discriminatory. Part of it is I've told people, do you want to accidentally get emotional and leave money on the table, or is money the most important thing to you? Money is not the most important thing for everybody. Sometimes it's timing. Sometimes it's making sure the right person gets in their house. What I've noticed over the years is that the letters, they've gotten more and more just generic, and they talk about loving the house. And they're mostly focused on the house and things that the buyers love. So if a seller wants to get emotionally swayed based on the buyer pointing out all the things they love about the house, and the seller says, yes, I do want to know that. Okay, I'll let you see that.
Yeah.
That's your choice. But that's how I set up with my sellers. So it's their choice if they want to know. I do ask if they're okay with me or if they would like me to redact any potential fair housing information or take any photos out. Sometimes I'll just read them the letters and I'll just read parts that make sense to read. Or do they want to just keep it based on purchase agreement and look at those after?
Yeah. And that's something as a listing agent I've seen a listing agent do this. Well, they say, if you are submitting a letter from the buyer, we ask that you leave out X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
And you could say that, like, we don't want you talking about, because any of the protected classes, if any of that information is in the letter, that's could be problematic.
Yeah.
Okay.
I also will say in the last year, I don't know if I've seen a letter.
Yeah. Interesting.
And
Okay.
I don't say don't write them. It's kind of, it's not been
the thing,
a real thing
Okay.
lately.
Okay, the other thing I forgot to bring up that I wanted to bring up was this phone call from a buyer's agent. So again, this is a potential tool in the tool belt. I call you the listing agent and I say, Sally wants to buy your listing. And I see that there's multiple offers. I'm just going to be really direct with you. What are the terms that would win? Can you tell me right now what terms would win, and we're going to write that offer? There's nothing that states that we can't do that. So there's no law that states that I can't ask that. There's no law that states that you can't disclose that.
If the sellers have told me I
If
can.
the sellers have told you can, which is something that I would say, get that in writing, get that as a part of the exclusive right to sell or something like that, that says, if asked, I can disclose, or maybe just in that moment, hey, sellers, I want to just have this in writing. You're giving me the okay to disclose the terms that would be a winning offer terms. Please initial here. And then you come back to me and you say, if you wrote this term, they take the offer now.
Yeah.
Because agents are doing this, and it is a part of how some of them are winning. And I think, let's say in that case, your seller said, yeah, if they wrote $100,000 over list, we'd take it. And I go back to Sally and I say, Sally, they said you write $100,000, they'll take it. And I look at Sally and I say, it's not worth that. And I know you've got the cash for it. I'm kind of covering my tail in the moment to just say, ethically, I feel like you need to know that this is a really high offer that you're considering writing, and it's your choice.
Yeah. Okay.
You're so uncomfortable with this, aren't you?
Well, I have thoughts. I think that when am I having that? Okay, let's say that the sellers say, yes, tell that one agent that information. My question would be, why aren't we telling everyone? Why are we choosing to tell one agent and not everyone? If we tell everyone, what's that gonna do?
Yeah.
Weird stuff.
Yeah.
Also, if I'm telling that, I mean, there's so many things that run through my mind. Again, my job is try to look to the future and look for what's going to happen next. What happens when they say, oh yeah, just tell them 5 over our current asking or our current highest offer? Okay, what happens when 5 minutes before closing, somebody changes their offer to their highest and best and it's 35,000 over that top offer? So now I told them a number, it doesn't win. Their buyer's agent went back to them and told them the number that was going to get them the house. They would have gone higher, but they listened to what I said and it didn't.
So
it didn't
what
go
if you
higher.
said, I'm not comfortable giving you specific terms because we know things could change last minute, but what my sellers are allowing me to do is tell you what the current offers of the current terms of the highest offer are.
I hate that. So is everybody, I think if that started being, okay, highest and best is supposed to be a blind, bring us your highest and best.
Now you're getting at the core of it. Yeah.
That is what it's meant to be. If there are multiple offers, it's meant to be everybody says, okay, based on this market, these conditions, the conditions of the property, my financial situation, I as the buyer am choosing my best set of terms and my best price for this home. What we're talking about is almost turning
like
into an
auction.
open auction system where the current highest bid is always showing and then people can choose when to drop out or when to keep moving forward. That's not really what highest and best is supposed to be.
Highest and best, I'm just going to play devil's advocate. That's it's sort of a best practice right now.
What?
Highest and best. Like in this kind of market, highest and best is what the market has substantiated as the norm.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be that way.
Correct.
It could be an auction-like scenario where in theory you could say, hey, listen, anybody that asks, like you asked, it's kind of we're going to reward the behavior that you're asking. And if somebody else asks, we're going to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, in theory, this could turn into a different type of way to handle a really hot market, which is like how highest and best came around.
Yeah.
So it's as long as you're doing your due diligence to have things in writing and be really clear on disclosure and just be like, we're not, I feel like there's I'm not saying that I think it's the best thing to do. I'm just playing devil's advocate a little bit. If I'm representing my buyer and I'm trying to get them in the home and they're willing because they love the house and they have the money.
Yeah. From the seller's perspective, I'm looking at, is this going to serve the seller best?
Yeah.
How many times have you seen and everybody's clumped together and then somebody comes in $25,000 over and just blows everybody else out of the water.
Yeah.
In your scenario, if everybody was asking for the current highest offer, that seller just lost $24,000.
Yeah.
Now it doesn't always happen, but it does.
Yeah.
So I think let the buyers blindly tell us what it's worth to them.
Yeah.
I think that ends up getting you market value typically.
Yeah. Yep.
And if it's a market that is like, I anticipate the one that I have coming on this week will go for 10% plus over asking, just based on what I'm seeing so far. We don't even have photos online yet. So who knows? Maybe we'll get no offers. I don't know. But based on the situation, I just think why don't we use auctions then? Why don't we sell every house on an auction?
Right.
Because it doesn't make the most sense.
Yeah.
For everybody. It shows the seller's hand is what it does. An auction continuously shows the seller's hand and the weak or strength of the seller.
Yeah.
If I have a home up for auction and I put it up for $500,000 and we don't get any offers, everybody knows there's no offers.
Yep.
Right? If I have it listed for 500 and a new buyer enters the market and they're like, oh my gosh, that's worth 525 to me. Let's write full price tomorrow, even though it's been on the market for 3 or 4 weeks, right? That's what that buyer is valuing. That's the market value for that buyer. They wouldn't have written that if it was in an auction necessarily. Right. So, or in an auction scenario, you wait a week and you don't have an offer, you're dropping your price.
Yep.
So I don't know. I think it's
just interesting to have the conversation. And I think
that it's two different conversations.
Yeah.
And I think that if we're talking highest and best, then we should not be using auction style
highest and best.
Yeah. We should not be communicating the current terms of every offer when asked or to everyone, because it is literally creating like guerrilla style warfare of like, bam, 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 like everybody. And then what chaos? Like, you better be using an online auction system at that point, because it could turn into, I've heard of homes getting 26 offers right now or more.
Yeah.
And if you've got 26 people consistently bumping $1,000 over each other, that's chaos. You better have an online auction system you're using. That's not highest and best. And that's not what it was meant to be. Yeah. Escalation clauses is a way that people are kind of turning highest and best into auction scenario. You're beating the next offer by X up to a cap. Do that. Why wouldn't you do that? And not every seller, I've had listing agents say, I don't accept those. Well, do you not accept them, or did you explain them to your seller?
That's annoying to me also.
Because I'm like, it better be that your seller is choosing not to.
Where it says, I don't accept. I'm like, you as a listing agent don't get to decide if you don't accept an escalation clause.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
So I would ask that question. Yeah. Now, again, you ask that as a buyer's agent. Well, are you not accepting that as practice, or did you explain it to your sellers? And
do they know what it is?
And have you presented it? Because you're legally required to present whatever I write. Yeah. You can write any crazy offer you want to. They're legally required to at least represent it and explain it to their seller.
Which not everybody does.
Well, I hope
it's wild. I know. Okay. The last thing I want to talk. Go ahead.
We didn't really hit on the presenting.
That's what I was getting at. Good. Yeah. We're on the same page. Okay.
Good. Go.
So I think, having been on the listing side as well and received multiple offers, and having been also on a broker side of things and seen the potential shit shows that happen behind the scenes with agents that, I hate to say it, but are completely negligent, unethical. They might be bull in China shop type negotiators. That is usually, none of those are usually advantageous, especially in a hot market or any market. I don't know how that works. If I, as an agent, am come in presenting my offer like I own the world and a total bull in a China shop, or a sloppy offer, or I'm you the DocuSign or AuthentiSign or whatever systems used for email signature system. I'm just forwarding you the offer with no formal presentation. I immediately, as a listing agent, again, it's the seller's decision, but I'm going to let them know this was presented really sloppy. The agent didn't call me. They didn't email me. I have no idea what their work ethic is like. I have no idea what their communication style is like. I've been in scenarios where transactions will completely fall apart because an agent is not on top of their shit. They
Yeah.
forgot, they thought their client had gone through underwriting, or they thought the title company had the paperwork but didn't have it. And so there's a real element of professionalism that especially when you're receiving multiple offers, that's like, I'm presenting you to the offer. And I know you as a listing agent, especially when it was crazy during COVID, were like, I didn't always want a phone call because I was getting lots of phone calls. Like, different listing agents have different preferences. But I personally think as like a standard practice to present a really well-written email with the highlights of the terms, a really clean offer in the right order without crazy additional papers on it, and then a phone call and or a voice memo or a text or something that says, this is who I am. I would love for this to be a win-win. I can assure you to the best of my ability that this is going to be a smooth and seamless transaction. We're on the same team in terms of getting this to closing.
Yep.
Like, I'm representing my client, but I want to work with you, not against you, as key. That's what I would say to that. How do you prefer to receive offers?
Well, you got to get them in your email. That's how you get them. Yeah. No, I think all the things you just said. And I think that...
What's the alternative? Like at a horse with a mail carrier?
Yeah.
With like, okay. I was like, what's going through your mind right now? Like, what scenario?
I prefer them in a velvet envelope.
Delivered from like a homing pigeon?
Drone.
A drone.
Drop off at my home. But only between the hours of 12 and 12:30 p.m.
You make it real easy.
Yeah, very, very easy. No, I think everything that you just said, I think don't just email. Yeah. I've had them go into my spam and then they get missed, or I've not gotten emails. And then they call and they're like,
oh shit, it was sitting in my draft or something.
Yeah. So email, and then always call and text, and make sure that you're getting a received response.
Yes.
Make sure the seller has acknowledged, or the listing agent has acknowledged.
Please confirm receipt of offer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Acknowledged in some way.
Yeah.
Got it. If they don't respond immediately, they're probably in an appointment. So chill out. I had an agent call me like 6 times in 1 hour. I got out of a listing appointment and I was like, what is happening? And they were freaking out because I didn't acknowledge receipt. And I was like, I was with a client. I can't so, be reasonable. I would, as a buyer's agent, I would ask, what's your plan for communication surrounding highest and best? Or are you going to present immediately? Do you know when you're going to be able to connect with your clients? I always try to communicate that extremely clearly and keep communication. Like, I over communicate now to buyer's agents because I want people to just feel like they know what's going on. Yeah. I think the radio silence is the worst. And so I try to communicate a lot.
And it ends up boomeranging back to you. Like, if there's radio silence coming from you and then you've got a bunch of buyer agents that are freaking out because their clients are freaking out, then you're going to feel that anxiety, headed your way. It's like, it seems so basic, but being proactive in communication with everybody makes the transaction so much more smooth.
Yeah. And then, everything you said, I think the cleaner packet, the better. I've been getting a ton of agents sending me all of their buyer representation lately, like compensation disclosure, their exclusive, like all their buyer paperwork is just in whatever sign, like they had them sign it all at the same time or something, and they send it all to me. And I'm like, nah, I don't want that. Like, I don't want to see any of your stuff. Get that out of there. Yeah. I've had missing docs lately where it's been like pulling teeth just to get a full packet that's a signable full purchase agreement. So just really making sure that this kind of just goes for everybody. Know your contracts, know what paperwork is required, and make sure it's all there and filled out correctly. I've also had, now buyer broker compensation is typically a term of the purchase agreement, and know how to write that, know what that means. Did you have the conversation with the listing agent beforehand and see what their offerings are? Make sure that that's written correctly. I'm seeing it written where it's double paid. I'm seeing it's been kind of a mess. So get educated on all of that stuff. Make sure you're writing clean offers that make sense. Yeah. I don't want to have to come back to you and say, this doesn't make sense. I need this change in it. So, just stuff like that.
First thing I feel like as a listing agent is having to coach, and sometimes we have to do this. Like, you got to coach the buyer's agent through the transaction in order to get to close. And if it's the best offer and it's the one your seller chooses, and that's part of our job sometimes, is actually like teaching the buyer's agent how to be a good agent.
Yeah. or doing their job, so, the more you can show me I don't have to do your job, the better.
Yeah.
That's a good way to say it. And then just, I would say, be communicative, but don't be crazy. That's nice to not have it just be like, I've had like agents call me 6 times. And I'm like, okay, I need you to just chill a little bit.
I just can't help but think about the constant dating analogy to all of this, because I'm like, oh my God, like chill out. You don't need to text me 18 times today.
Yeah.
Like, I'll get back to you when I can get back to you.
Yeah.
And as soon as you do that, I'm like, back off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways, does it make you uncomfortable when I talk about dating on our real estate podcast?
No.
Okay.
You can
good.
talk about dating all you want. Yeah, I mean, and then I would say like a good strategy is put yourself in that person's shoes. If you don't have a listing right now, put yourself in the shoes of a listing agent and that has 22 offers coming in. And kind of
22
think about
agents communicating 6 times an hour.
Yeah.
It's
think
ridiculous.
about what you would like. I think being clear, concise. I do think making a case for why it's going to be easy to work for you or with you. What is your relationship to the lender? If you've done 26 deals with them in the last 6 months, let me know that. And if they've never had a deal close late for you, let me know that.
Yeah.
Now I'm not as worried about lenders anymore.
Yeah.
We're not seeing a ton of
Things
issues
falling
with
apart,
lenders. But if it's a lender that I'm like, ooh, and you want to
like
make
a
case
national
for 'em.
situation where there's not a local contact person. It's like, I want to know, is this person accessible when we have a hiccup? Because we will. How's the communication again? Yeah. That it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Be clear, be concise. I was going to say, when you're calling, don't ask what terms would the seller like to see. That's such an open-ended question.
I've heard people coach to that so many times, though.
I know. What am I supposed to say to that? Literally, my
what
response
if the seller
is,
says, we really want this closing date because we want to be here till the end of the school year?
Closing date's one thing. That's a separate question.
Terms.
People are always asking, what's your ideal?
What was the question?
What
What's
terms
the price?
would your sellers like to see?
Is the one to ask or not to ask?
I would not, just be more specific.
Okay.
What terms is my response is, they want every sparkly term you can possibly put into the purchase agreement.
So what do you think the buyer's
appraisal
agent
gap,
means when
inspection.
they're asking that?
I don't know. I don't know what they want me to tell them. Like, give us all your money and give us all your best terms.
So
That's
if
what my
I
seller
call as
wants
a
to
buyer's
see.
agent and I say, does the seller have a preferred closing date?
Yep, I will tell you.
Okay. Is there a certain percentage of earnest money that the seller would really like to see down?
The more the better.
Okay. What other specific items? Everything else is price.
Is inspection.
Yeah. Okay. So
How do they feel about inspection?
How do they feel about inspection, Annalie?
Be great if they'd waive it.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, like everybody should know right now what every seller wants to see.
Yeah.
Every seller would love a cash, no inspection, no appraisal necessary, closing on their ideal closing date.
So the only thing to really ask is about
100%
closing
earnest
date.
money.
Yeah.
Right.
The only thing really to ask is closing date.
Yeah. I mean,
Because
if there's a specific other thing, if there's a specific thing that's like, there's a pergola that's not attached outside, would the sellers like to keep that? It wasn't noted.
Yeah.
My buyers would love it. Is that going to be an issue for the seller?
There is kind of random
things
stuff
that.
too, like if you know, because it's already been told to you or something, that the seller is elderly, they're moving to assisted living, and you see that they've got a pole barn full of stuff that the rest of the house is empty. You could call the listing agent and say, would it be helpful if they knew they could leave everything that's in the house in the house? Okay, great. We can
1,000%.
write that into the offer.
1,000%. That's a specific term, though.
Yeah.
So
right.
Yes, I love specific asks.
Yeah.
Ask me all day long. I would also say you could ask, is there anything goofy or annoying to the seller that they would like the buyer to take on for them, or, in that capacity? You could ask something like that. Like, would anything be helpful for the seller that we could take off their plates? Leaving things, not doing X, Y's, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
If we tell them they don't have to patch any holes in the walls, or things like that, like you could get creative and ask those more specific.
Yeah.
But literally every phone call is, what kind of terms are your sellers looking for?
Good ones.
All the best ones. You want me? I don't know why.
This is where Queen Annalie comes out. Excuse me, we'd like all the best ones, please.
I literally say that because I'm like, what do you want me to say? It's just such a goofy question.
You know why? I think I'm just going to give the buyer's agents the benefit of the doubt and assume that they heard in some training or some coach said,
1000%.
call and ask that question. But I can see why the
1000%.
question gets irritating as a listing agent.
I just don't understand what anybody wants me to say to it.
You could respond with that.
What do you want me to say to this? No, I literally just say they want every best term your buyer possibly can give them.
I love it.
Well, it's true, right?
It is true. All right. It's time to wrap it up.
Okay. Well, let's recap a little bit. Okay. So on the seller's side, make sure you're giving your sellers the options and asking them what they want to do. Do not tell them what to do. Communicate. Talk to them about letters, talk to them about fair housing, talk to them about if they want information disclosed or not. That might be a case-by-case basis. In my opinion, we don't want to turn this into an auction situation. That's just my personal opinion. Other people have different opinions. I think Jen is on the other side a little bit.
Maybe a little bit. Yeah, a little bit.
On the buy side, make sure that your buyers know are coached and are comfortable. So if it's looking like the market that they are in, if you know when you're sitting down with them that every home in the market they're looking to be in has been going into multiples for the last 3 months, make sure that they understand what that's going to look like, feel like, what their options are for all of the terms. How can we fight and how are we going to fight best? Or do you even want to be in that market? Do you want to look at homes that are not necessarily in that market? Because there are markets where that's not happening. Give them those choices. And then number 3, as an agent, presentation. Yeah. Be clear, be concise. Think about.
Don't be an idiot.
Put yourself in the other person's shoes. You want to make yourself feel like you're going to be easy to work with. I have had literally, I think the last 2 homes that I've put under contract, I've worked with the agent before and it was amazing. And I did mention that to my seller. You can feel confident with this agent. I've closed deals with them in the past. They're incredible. They have an incredible team. I feel really good about working with them. I typically don't tell clients if I'm nervous about the agent until I need to tell them that I'm nervous about the agent.
Which is another episode
which
we'll
we're going
get
to talk.
into.
We're going to dig into that. So
yeah. Okay, great. We'd love to hear from you. So if you've had a challenging multiple offer situation, how did you handle it? If you guys have other specific questions you would like us to tackle, we're going to do kind of a Q&A. We're calling it Happy-ish Hour, something like that.
Yeah.
Once a week, we're going to sit down on an afternoon with a glass of wine.
Yeah.
And we're going to just chit-chat. So if you've got questions or things you'd like to talk about or scenarios you'd like us to hear about or funny things, you can email us at hello@realestatedonerightishpod.com. Yeah, is that right? Did I get that right?
Yep.
And that's in the show notes.
realestatedonerightishpod.com.
Okay. And that's in the show notes.
Pod.com.
We'll have it in the show notes. Okay. Along with every week we're gonna try to have something in the show notes for you to download. So I can't remember what you said at the beginning of the show, but we're gonna go back and after this episode, after we edit it, we'll figure out what little freebie download we can give you, whether it's just a simple guide on presenting multiple offers or a template or something like that. We'll give you something good.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else did I miss?
No.
Okay.
As always, if you're finding value in these conversations, please follow us. Give us a review. Hopefully it's 5 stars because those are our favorite. It really does make a big difference and we would love to see them.
Yeah, that's all for this episode of Real Estate Done Rightish. Until next time, cheers to doing it rightish.
We'll try. I'll just do it as fast as it feels. Okay. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general knowledge and informational purposes only and do not constitute professional, legal, or financial advice. As licensed real estate agents in the state of Minnesota, we are not attorneys, financial advisors, or tax professionals, and we cannot provide advice in those areas or in regards to any agency or broker-specific topics in any other state. Any reliance you place on the information provided in this podcast is strictly at your own risk. We strongly encourage you to consult with qualified professionals for specific guidance related to your individual circumstances.
Wow! That was good. All right. Holy Okay, let's see. Where's our thingamajobber? Ready? Set, go. Welcome to Real Estate Done Rightish, your favorite podcast for realtors by realtors. I'm Jen.
And I'm Annalie. And for a combined 30 years, we've been working in this industry just trying to figure it out. And by figuring it out,
Well, that's me.
that's you.
Let's do the whole intro again.
Okay.
Welcome to Real Estate
Don't
Done.
say first. You might just want to pause and then start with, welcome to Real Estate.
Recording, is that recording?